Chapter 4. Determine the strength of people's character. The law of compulsive behavior. When selecting individuals to work and associate with, resist the allure of their reputation or superficial image they project. Instead, cultivate the habit of delving deep within them to discern their true character. People's character is shaped during their early years and shaped by their daily habits. It is the driving force behind their repeated actions and the perpetuation of negative patterns. Observe these patterns closely, as people rarely engage in a single act without the likelihood of repeating it. Assess the relative strength of their character by evaluating their ability to withstand adversity, their adaptability in working with others, their patience, and their capacity for learning. Always seek out individuals who exhibit signs of strength and steer clear of the numerous toxic types. Thoroughly understand your own character to break free from compulsive patterns and seize control of your destiny. The pattern. To his aunts, uncles, and grandparents who witnessed his upbringing in Houston, Texas, Howard Hughes Jr., 1905-1976, was a rather reserved and awkward boy. His mother had nearly succumbed to childbirth and, consequently, could not conceive any more children. Consequently, she lavished excessive affection on her son. Persistent anxiety about his susceptibility to illness led her to constantly monitor his every move and take every precaution to safeguard him. The boy was in awe of his father, Howard Sr., who had established the Sharp Hughes Tool Company in 1909, which would soon bring immense wealth to the family. However, his father's frequent business travel left Howard with a significant amount of time spent with his mother. To his relatives, he appeared nervous and overly sensitive, but as he matured, he transformed into a remarkably polite and reserved young man, utterly devoted to his parents. Tragedy struck in 1922 when his mother, at the age of 39, suddenly passed away. His father never fully recovered from her early demise and succumbed to death 2 years later. Now, at the tender age of 19, young Howard found himself alone in the world, having lost his two closest companions and the guiding light of his life. Howard Hughes Jr. faced a sudden transformation. His relatives, determined to fill the void and provide him with the guidance he needed, were shocked to encounter a Howard they had never seen before or suspected. The soft-spoken young man had become increasingly abusive, rebelling against their advice and refusing to continue college or follow their recommendations. The more they insisted, the more belligerent he became. Inheriting the family wealth, Howard could now achieve complete independence. He intended to take this to the fullest extent possible. He immediately went to work to buy out all the shares in the Sharp Hughes Tool Company owned by his relatives and gain complete control of the highly lucrative business. Under Texas law, he could petition the courts to declare himself an adult if he could prove his competence to assume the role. Hughes befriended a local judge and soon obtained the declaration he sought. Now, he could run his own life and the tool company without interference. His relatives were astounded by this sudden change, and soon, both sides would cut off almost all contact with each other for the rest of their lives. What had transformed the sweet boy they had known into this hyper-aggressive and rebellious young man remained a mystery they would never solve. Shortly after declaring his independence, Howard settled in Los Angeles, determined to pursue his two new passions, filmmaking and piloting airplanes. With the financial means to indulge in both interests, he decided to combine them in 1927 by producing an epic, high-budget film about airmen during World War I, titled Hell's Angels. He hired a director and a team of writers to develop the script, but he had a falling out with the director and fired him. He then hired another director, Luther Reed, a renowned filmmaker, to take over the project. Howard Hughes, an aviation enthusiast who could better relate to the project, initially joined but soon quit due to Hughes's constant interference. His final words to Hughes were, "If you know so much, why don't you direct it yourself?" Following his advice, Hughes took over as the director. As Hughes sought realism, the budget soared. Months and years passed as Hughes experimented with hundreds of crew members and stunt pilots, resulting in 3 tragic fiery accidents. After relentless battles, he fired almost every department head and personally managed the production. He meticulously oversaw every shot, angle, and storyboard. Finally, Hell's Angels premiered in 1930 and became a massive hit, despite its chaotic storyline. The flying and action sequences captivated audiences, solidifying Hughes's legend. The film had cost a staggering $3.8 million to produce and had incurred a significant loss of nearly $2 million, yet this fact remained largely unnoticed. Hughes himself remained humble, acknowledging his mistake in attempting to single-handedly manage the production, stating, "Making Hell's Angels by myself was my biggest mistake. Trying to do the work of 12 men was sheer foolishness on my part. I learned through bitter experience that no single individual possesses the knowledge to comprehend everything." Throughout the 1930s, Hughes's legend continued to grow as he set several world records in aviation speed, risking his life on numerous occasions. He spun off from his father's company to establish Hughes Aircraft, with the ambitious goal of transforming it into the world's leading airplane manufacturer. At the time, securing substantial military contracts for planes was crucial, and as the United States entered World War II, Hughes made a strategic move to secure such a contract. In 1942, various officials in the Defense Department, impressed by Hughes's aviation achievements and his meticulous attention to detail, recognized his potential. They approached him with an opportunity to secure a significant military contract for planes. Interviews and his relentless lobbying efforts led to an $18 million grant from the government to produce 3 massive transport planes, known as the Hercules. These flying boats were designed to ferry soldiers and supplies to various war fronts, with wingspans exceeding a football field and heights of over 3 stories at the hull. If Hughes Aircraft successfully delivered the planes on time and within budget, they would secure a monopoly in the transport plane market. Less than a year later, Hughes Aircraft received even more positive news. The Air Force was impressed by the sleek design of his smaller D-2 plane and placed an order for 100 photo reconnaissance planes for $43 million. These planes were to be modified based on the D-2's specifications. However, as the company's reputation began to grow, whispers of trouble started to circulate. Hughes Aircraft had initially started as a hobby for him, and he had appointed several Hollywood friends and aviation associates to high-level positions. As the company expanded, the number of departments increased, but communication among them was severely lacking. Everything had to flow through Hughes himself, and he had to be consulted on even the smallest decisions. Frustrated by his interference in their work, several highly skilled engineers had already resigned. Recognizing the problem, Hughes hired a general manager to assist with the Hercules project and streamline the company's operations. However, the general manager quit after only 2 months. Hughes had promised him complete autonomy in restructuring the company, but within just a few days of his appointment, he began to veto his decisions and undermine his authority. By the late summer of 1943, $6 million of the $9 million allocated for the production of the first Hercules plane had already been spent, yet the plane remained nowhere near completion. The Defense Department officials who had endorsed Hughes for the project were growing increasingly concerned. The photo reconnaissance order was a crucial component of the war effort, and they feared that Hughes's mismanagement could jeopardize their efforts. Internal chaos and delays plagued the Hercules boat problems with the more crucial reconnaissance order. Had Hughes deceived them with his charm and publicity campaign? By early 1944, the reconnaissance plane order had plummeted hopelessly behind schedule. The military now demanded Hughes hire a new general manager to salvage the situation. Fortunately, Charles Perel, the boy wonder of aircraft production, was available. However, Perel was reluctant to take the job. He was aware of the chaos within Hughes aircraft, as was everyone else in the industry. Desperate, Hughes launched Charm Offensive, assuring Perel of his realization of the error of his ways and his need for Pirelli's expertise. Surprisingly, Perel found Hughes completely humble, portraying himself as a victim of unscrupulous executives within the company. Perel was impressed by Hughes's technical knowledge of aircraft production. Despite his better judgment, Perel accepted the job. However, after only a few weeks, Perel regretted his decision. The planes were further behind schedule than he had been led to believe. Every aspect of the operation reeked of a lack of professionalism, from the shoddy drawings of the planes to the overall lack of efficiency. Perel implemented wasteful spending cuts and streamlined departments, but his authority was met with resistance. Everyone knew who truly ran the company, as Hughes continued to undermine Pirelli's reforms. As the orders fall behind intensified and the pressure mounted, Hughes mysteriously disappeared, allegedly suffering a nervous breakdown. By the end of the war, not a single reconnaissance plane had been produced, leading the Air Force to cancel the contract. Disheartened by the experience, Perel resigned from his job in December of that year. In an attempt to salvage something from the war years, Hughes could point to the completion of one of the flying boats, later known as the Spruce Goose. He claimed it was a marvel, a brilliant piece of engineering. Engineering on a massive scale, he decided to test fly the plane himself. However, as he flew over the ocean, it became evident that the plane lacked sufficient power for its enormous weight. After a mile, he gently set it down on the water and had it towed back. The plane would never fly again and would be dry docked in a hangar at a yearly cost of $1 million, with Hughes refusing to disassemble it for scrap. By 1948, the owner of RKO Pictures, Floyd Odlum, was seeking a buyer. RKO was one of Hollywood's most profitable and prestigious studios, and Hughes yearned to regain his limelight by entering the film industry. He acquired Odlum's shares, gaining a controlling interest. Within RKO, panic ensued. Executives were aware of Hughes's reputation for meddling. The company had recently introduced a new regime headed by Doré Sherry, which aimed to transform RKO into the premier studio for young directors. Sherry, anticipating humiliation, decided to resign but agreed to meet Hughes, primarily out of curiosity. Hughes exuded charm and seized Sherry's hand, gazing him directly in the eye and declaring, "I have no intention of managing the studio. You will be left alone." Surprised by Hughes's sincerity and concurrence with Sherry's proposed transformation, Sherry relented. Initially, everything went as Hughes had promised. However, the phone calls resumed. Hughes demanded that Sherry replace an actress on the studio's latest production. Realizing his error, Sherry promptly resigned, taking many of his own staff with him. Hughes proceeded to fill positions with individuals who adhered to his directives, hiring only the actors and actresses he personally favored. He acquired a screenplay titled Jet Pilot and intended to produce it as a 1949 version of Hell's Angels. The film would star John Wayne, and the renowned Joseph von Sternberg was slated to direct. After a few weeks, Sternberg could no longer endure the constant phone calls and resigned. Hughes assumed control. This marked a complete repetition of his previous actions. Of the production of Hell's Angels, it took nearly 3 years to complete, primarily due to the extensive aerial photography, which significantly increased the budget to $4 million. Hughes had shot so much footage that he struggled to decide how to edit it down. The film took 6 years to finish, by which time the jet scenes were outdated, and Wayne looked considerably older. Consequently, the film fell into obscurity. Soon, the once thriving studio was losing substantial sums. In 1955, with stockholders furious at his mismanagement, Hughes sold RKO to the General Tire Company. In the 1950s and early 1960s, the U.S. military sought to adapt its fighting philosophy to the changing times. To wage war in regions like Vietnam, it required helicopters, including a light observation helicopter for reconnaissance. The Army identified potential manufacturers and, in 1961, selected 2 companies that had submitted the most compelling proposals. They rejected Hughes's second aircraft company, which he had spun off from Hughes Tool. The original version of Hughes aircraft was now operating independently from Hughes himself. Hughes refused to accept this setback. His publicity team embarked on a massive lobbying campaign, whining and dining Army brass, much like they had done 2 decades earlier with the photo reconnaissance planes. They spent lavishly on the campaign, which proved successful. Hughes's entry was now in the running alongside the other 2 companies. The Army decided that the company with the lowest price would win. Hughes's submission surprised the military. It was so low that it seemed impossible for the company to make any profit on the helicopter's manufacture. It appeared that his strategy was to incur losses during the initial production phase to secure the auction, obtain the contract, and then raise the price on subsequent orders. In 1965, the Army finally awarded the contract to Hughes, an astonishing coup for a company that had had limited success in airplane production. They were well made and delivered on time, allowing the Army to potentially order thousands of helicopters. This could serve as a launchpad for Hughes to expand into commercial helicopter production. As the Vietnam War intensified, the Army was expected to increase its orders, and Hughes would likely benefit from this surge. However, as they waited for the first helicopters, those who had awarded the contract to Hughes began to panic. The company was significantly behind schedule, and they launched an investigation to uncover the cause. To their horror, they discovered the lack of an organized production line. The plant was too small to handle such a large order. The details were inaccurate. The drawings were unprofessional, the tools were inadequate, and there were insufficient skilled workers on site. It seemed as though Hughes had no prior experience in designing planes and was attempting to learn on the job. This was similar to the predicament faced with the photo reconnaissance planes, which only a few in the military could recall. It was evident that Hughes had failed to learn from the earlier fiasco. As predicted, the helicopters only trickled in. Feeling desperate, Army brass decided to conduct a new auction for the much larger order of 2,200 helicopters they now needed. They hoped a more experienced company would bid lower and force Hughes out of the competition. Hughes panicked, realizing that losing this follow-on bid would spell ruin. The company was counting on raising its price for this new order to recoup the substantial losses incurred during the initial production. This was the risky bet Hughes had made. If he attempted to bid low for the additional helicopters, he would not be able to make a profit. However, if his bid was too high, he would be underbid, which ultimately happened. The loss to use in the end for the helicopters he produced was astronomical, amounting to $90 million, and had a devastating impact on the company. In 1976, Howard Hughes passed away in an airplane crash while en route from Acapulco to Houston. As the autopsy was conducted, the public finally gained insight into the tragic events that had unfolded during the last decade of his life. Years prior, Hughes had succumbed to a crippling addiction to pain pills and narcotics. He had confined himself to tightly sealed hotel rooms, fearing even the slightest contamination by germs. At the time of his death, he weighed a mere 93 pounds. Hughes had lived in near total isolation, relying on a handful of assistants to cater to his every need, desperately attempting to keep his struggles hidden from the public eye. Ironically, the man who had always feared losing control ended up in his final years at the complete mercy of a few assistants and executives who oversaw his slow demise through drug use and wrested control of his company from him. Interpretation: Howard Hughes' life trajectory was shaped from a young age. His mother, an anxious individual, channeled her anxiety towards her only son after learning she could no longer conceive. She smothered him with constant attention, becoming his closest companion and rarely allowing him to venture out. His father placed immense expectations on him to carry on the family legacy. His parents dictated every aspect of his life, including his attire, diet, and social circle. Though his friends were limited, they relentlessly searched for the ideal environment for their son, who had demonstrated hypersensitivity and difficulty in social interactions. Hughes was utterly dependent on them, driven by a profound fear of disappointing them, which resulted in his supreme politeness and obedience. However, beneath the smiles and obedience, Hughes harbored deep resentment for his complete dependence. Once his parents passed away, his true nature finally emerged from the facade. He harbored no affection for his relatives and would rather face the future alone than endure their company. Howard Hughes, a man of immense wealth and power, sought absolute control over every aspect of his life. At the tender age of 19, he yearned for complete autonomy over his destiny, fearing any semblance of weakness would resurface childhood anxieties. With his inherited fortune, he had the means to fulfill his dream of unrivaled independence. His passion for aviation mirrored this desire. Only in the skies, alone at the helm, could he truly experience the exhilaration of control and liberation from his insecurities. He could soar above the masses, who he secretly despised, and brave death, repeatedly facing it because it would be a death under his own power. His leadership style in Hollywood and other business ventures further revealed his character. When writers, directors, or executives proposed their ideas, he perceived them as personal challenges to his authority. This triggered his old anxieties about helplessness and dependence on others. To combat this, he exerted complete control over every aspect of his businesses, even overseeing the smallest details like spelling and grammar in publicity notices. He created a loose structure within his companies, allowing executives to compete for his attention. Internal chaos was preferable to any disruption as long as everything flowed through him. However, this pursuit of absolute control paradoxically led to his downfall. One man could not possibly manage everything, resulting in unforeseen problems. When projects failed and pressure mounted, he would either disappear or conveniently fall ill. His need for control extended even to his romantic relationships. where he scrutinized every action and had women followed by private investigators. The challenge posed by Howard Hughes to those who chose to work with him was that he meticulously crafted a public image that concealed his glaring character flaws. Instead of the irrational micromanager, he could present himself as the rugged individualist and the epitome of American maverick. Most damaging was his ability to portray himself as a successful businessman leading a billion-dollar empire. In reality, he had inherited a highly profitable tool business from his father. Over the years, the only parts of his empire that generated substantial profits were the tool company and an earlier version of Hughes aircraft that he had spun out of the tool company. For various reasons, both of these businesses operated completely independently of Hughes. He had no involvement in their operations. The numerous other businesses he personally managed, his later aircraft division, his film ventures, his hotels, and real estate in Las Vegas, all incurred substantial losses, fortunately covered by the other two. In fact, Hughes was a terrible businessman, and the pattern of failures that exposed this was evident to everyone. However, this is a blind spot in human nature. We are poorly equipped to assess the character of the people we interact with. Their public image, the reputation that precedes them, easily captivates us. We are drawn to appearances. If they surround themselves with an alluring myth, as Hughes did, we are inclined to believe in it. Instead of evaluating people's character, their ability to collaborate effectively, keep their promises, and remain resilient in challenging circumstances, we choose to work with or hire individuals based on their impressive resumes, intelligence, and charm. Even a positive trait like intelligence becomes meaningless if the person also possesses weak or questionable character. Consequently, due to this blind spot, we endure the tyranny of the irresolute leader, the micromanaging boss, and the conniving partner. This is the source of countless tragedies throughout history, our inherent pattern as a species. At all costs, you must alter your perspective. Train yourself to disregard the facade that people present, the myth that surrounds them. Instead of plunging into their depths to discern their character, we can observe patterns in their past, the quality of their decisions, problem-solving approaches, authority delegation, and collaboration with others. A person of strong character is like gold, rare but invaluable. They possess adaptability, learning abilities, and the potential for self-improvement. Since your success hinges on the people you work with and for, prioritize their character development. This will prevent you from experiencing the disillusionment of discovering their true nature at an inopportune moment. Character is destiny. Heraclitus. Keys to human nature. For millennia, humans believed in fate, a force, such as spirits, gods, or God, that compelled our actions. Our entire lives were supposedly laid out in advance, determining our success or failure. However, our perspective has evolved significantly. We now believe that we have a significant role in shaping our own destiny. Occasionally, we may experience a fleeting sensation reminiscent of our ancestors' feelings. Perhaps a personal relationship sours, or our career encounters a setback, and these challenges bear uncanny similarities to past experiences. Alternatively, we may recognize the need for improvement in our project management approach, only to find ourselves repeating the same mistakes with similar results. For a moment, we might feel compelled by an unseen malevolent force, a curse, to relive the same situations. We can often observe this phenomenon more clearly in the actions of others, particularly those closest to us. For instance, we witness friends repeatedly falling for the wrong person or unconsciously pushing away the right one. We cringe at their foolish behavior, such as ill-considered investments or career choices, only to see them repeat the same mistakes a few years later, as if they have forgotten the lessons learned. We often encounter individuals who consistently offend the wrong person at the wrong time, creating hostility wherever they go. Others grumble under pressure, repeating the same pattern while blaming others or bad luck for their misfortunes. We also know the addicts who manage to overcome their addiction only to relapse or develop a new form of addiction. These patterns are evident, but people resist acknowledging the possibility of external influences beyond their control. If we are honest with ourselves, we must admit some truth to the concept of fate. We tend to repeat the same decisions and problem-solving methods. Our lives exhibit a pattern, particularly evident in our mistakes and failures. However, there's a different perspective on this concept. It's not spirits or gods controlling us, but rather our character. The word character originates from ancient Greek, referring to an engraving or stamping instrument. Character is deeply ingrained within us, compelling us to act in certain ways beyond our awareness and control. We can conceptualize this character as having three essential components, each layered on top of the other, adding depth. The earliest and most profound layer comes from genetics. Our brains are wired in a specific way, predisposing us to certain moods and preferences. For instance, genetics can make some people prone to depression, while others are introverts or extroverts. It might even incline some toward greed, seeking attention, privilege, or possessions. Psychoanalyst Melanie Klein, who studied infants, believed that greedy and grasping children were predisposed to this character trait from birth. There may be other genetic factors that predispose us toward hostility, anxiety, or openness. The second layer, formed above the first, originates from our early years and the specific attachments we form with our mothers and caregivers. During the first 3 or 4 years, our brains are particularly malleable. We experience emotions more intensely, creating deeper memory traces than anything that will follow. In this period of life, we are most susceptible to the influence of others, and the impact of these years is profound. John Bowlby, an anthropologist and psychoanalyst, studied patterns of attachment between mothers and children and identified 4 fundamental schemas: free autonomous, dismissing, enmeshed ambivalent, and disorganized. The free autonomous schema arises from mothers who provide their children with autonomy, continuously sensitive to their needs while also protecting them. Dismissing mothers often maintain a distance, sometimes even being hostile and rejecting. Such children are imprinted with a sense of abandonment and the belief that they must constantly fend for themselves. Enmeshed ambivalent mothers are inconsistent in their attention, sometimes suffocating and over-involved, other times withdrawing due to their own problems or anxieties. They can make their children feel responsible for the care they should be receiving. Disorganized mothers send conflicting signals to their children, reflecting their own inner chaos and possibly early emotional traumas. Nothing their children do seems right, leading to the development of powerful emotional problems. Of course, there are various gradations within each type and combinations of them, but in every case, the quality of attachment we experienced in our earliest years creates deep tendencies within us, particularly in how we use relationships to manage or regulate our stress. For instance, children of dismissing parents tend to avoid negative emotional situations and isolate themselves. Off from feelings of dependency, they might find it harder to commit to a relationship or unconsciously push people away. The children of the enmeshed variety will experience significant anxiety in relationships and feel numerous conflicting emotions. They will always be ambivalent toward people, which will manifest in noticeable patterns in their lives, where they pursue people and then unconsciously retreat. Generally, from these early years, people will exhibit a particular tone to their character: hostile and aggressive, secure and confident, anxious and avoidant, needy and enmeshing. These two layers are so deep that we have no real conscious awareness of them and the behavior they compel unless we make significant effort in examining ourselves. Above this, a third layer will form from our habits and experiences as we grow older. Based on the first two layers, we tend to rely on specific strategies for dealing with stress, seeking pleasure, or handling people. These strategies become habits that are ingrained in our youth. There will be variations in the specific nature of our character depending on the people we interact with: friends, teachers, romantic partners, and how they respond to us. However, in general, these three layers will establish certain noticeable patterns. We make a particular decision, which is neurologically engraved in our brains. We are compelled to repeat this because the path is already laid out. It becomes a habit, and our character is formed out of these thousands of habits. The earliest ones set well before we could be conscious of them. There is a fourth layer as well. It often develops in late childhood and adolescence as people become aware of their character flaws. They attempt to conceal them. If they sense deep within that they are an anxious, timid type of person, they realize that this is not a socially acceptable trait. They learn to disguise it with a front. They compensate by trying to appear outgoing, carefree, or otherwise even domineering. This makes it all the more challenging for us to discern the essence of their character. Some character traits can be positive and reflect inner strength. For instance, certain individuals possess a propensity for being generous, open, empathetic, and resilient under pressure. However, these stronger, more adaptable qualities often necessitate awareness and practice to truly become ingrained habits that can be relied upon. As we age, life tends to erode our strengths. Our empathy becomes more difficult to maintain. See Chapter 2. If we are reflexively generous and open to everyone we encounter, we can find ourselves in significant trouble. Confidence without self-awareness and control can lead to grandiosity. Without conscious effort, these strengths will gradually diminish or transform into weaknesses. What this implies is that the weakest aspects of our character are the ones that form habits and compulsive behaviors because they do not require effort or practice to maintain. Furthermore, we can develop conflicting character traits, possibly stemming from a disparity between our genetic predispositions and our earliest influences, or from parents who instill distinct values in us. We might experience an internal struggle between idealism and materialism. The underlying principle remains the same. The conflicted character, developed in our early years, will manifest in a different pattern, characterized by decisions that reflect our ambivalence or swing back and forth. As a student of human nature, your task is twofold. First, you must delve into understanding your own character, examining the elements from your past that have shaped it and the recurring negative patterns in your life. It is futile to eliminate this inherent stamp that constitutes your character. It is too deeply ingrained. However, through awareness, you can learn to mitigate or even stop certain negative patterns. You can strive to transform the negative and weak aspects of your character into actual strengths. You can attempt to create a more balanced and positive version of yourself. New habits and patterns, when practiced actively, can shape your character and destiny. For more on this, see the last section of this chapter. Secondly, you must develop your skill in reading the character of the people you interact with. To do so, Consider character as a primary value when choosing a person to work for, with, or as an intimate partner. Give it more value than their charm, intelligence, or reputation. The ability to observe people's character, as seen in their actions and patterns, is an absolutely critical social skill. It can help you avoid precisely those kinds of decisions that can lead to years of misery. Choosing an incompetent leader, a shady partner, a scheming assistant, or an incompatible spouse who can poison your life. However, it's a skill you must consciously develop because humans are generally inept at such assessments. The root cause of our ineptness lies in our tendency to base our judgments of people on what is most apparent. However, as stated earlier, people often try to conceal their weaknesses by presenting them as something positive. We see them brimming with self-confidence, only to later discover that they are actually arrogant and incapable of listening. They appear frank and sincere, but over time, we realize that they are actually boorish and unable to consider the feelings of others, or they seem prudent and thoughtful, but eventually, we see that they are actually timid at their core and afraid of the slightest criticism. People can be quite skilled at creating these optical illusions, and we fall for them. Similarly, people will charm and flatter us, blinded by our desire to like them, and we fail to look deeper and see their character flaws. Related to this, when we look at people, we often end up seeing only their reputation, the myth that surrounds them, their position, and not the individual. We come to believe that a person's character is defined by their position and not by their true self. Successful people, by nature, must be generous, intelligent, and good, and they deserve everything they have achieved. However, successful individuals come in diverse forms. Some are adept at manipulating others to attain their success, concealing their own incompetence. Others are outright manipulative. Successful people share the same character flaws as anyone else. We often assume that someone who adheres to a specific religion, political belief system, or moral code possesses the corresponding character traits. However, individuals bring their inherent character to the positions they occupy or the religions they practice. A person can be a progressive liberal or a loving Christian yet harbor intolerant tendencies at their core. The first step in studying character is to recognize these illusions and facades and develop the ability to discern through them. We must scrutinize everyone for signs of their character, regardless of their appearance or position. With this mindset firmly in place, we can then work on several key components of the skill, recognizing specific signs that people emit in certain situations that clearly reveal their character. Understanding general categories of people, such as strong versus weak character. Being aware of certain types of characters that are often the most toxic and should be avoided if possible. Character signs. The most significant indicator of a person's character lies in their consistent actions over time. Despite claims of personal growth and changes, we inevitably notice recurring patterns of behavior and decisions throughout their lives. These decisions reveal their true character. Pay attention to any notable forms of behavior, such as disappearing when faced with stress, failing to complete important tasks, suddenly becoming belligerent when challenged, or, conversely, rising to the occasion when given the opportunity. Responsibility demands that you conduct research into their past actions, observing other patterns that fit into this current behavior. Pay close attention to their present actions, viewing them as part of a compulsive pattern rather than isolated incidents. If you ignore this pattern, it's your own fault. Remember the primary corollary of this law: people never do something just once. They may attempt to excuse themselves, claiming they lost their minds in the moment, but you can be certain they will repeat their foolishness on another occasion, driven by their character and habits. In fact, they often repeat actions even when it contradicts their self-interest, revealing the compulsive nature of their weaknesses. Cassius Severus, an infamous lawyer-orator who flourished during the reign of Emperor Augustus, exemplified this behavior. Initially, he gained attention with his fiery speeches criticizing high-ranking Romans for their extravagant lifestyles. His style was bombastic yet humorous, appealing to the public. Encouraged by the attention, he escalated his attacks, insulting other officials and raising the tone of his verbal assaults. Despite warnings from the authorities, the novelty wore off, and the crowds dwindled. However, this only fueled Severus' determination, leading him to persist in his obnoxious campaign. In 87, the authorities finally reached their breaking point and ordered the burning of his books and his banishment to the island of Crete. To their dismay, Severus continued his unruly behavior, sending copies of his latest diatribes to Rome. Despite repeated warnings, he not only disregarded them but also began haranguing and insulting local Cretan officials, who sought his execution. In AD 24, the wise Senate wisely banished him to the unpopulated rock of Zerifos in the middle of the Aegean Sea. There, he spent the remaining 8 years of his life, likely crafting more insulting speeches that remained unheard. It's hard to believe that people can control self-destructive tendencies, and we want to give them the benefit of the doubt, as the Romans did. However, we must remember the wise words in the Bible. Like a dog that returns to its vomit is a fool that repeats his folly. Our character can be revealed in how we handle everyday affairs. If we're late on simple assignments, we'll be late on larger projects. If we get irritated by minor inconveniences, we'll grumble under bigger ones. If we're forgetful on small matters and inattentive to details, we'll be so on more important ones. Look at how we treat employees in everyday settings and notice if there are discrepancies between the person we present and our attitude toward underlings. In 1969, Jeb Magruder came to San Clemente for a job interview in the Nixon administration. The interviewer was Bob Haldeman, the chief of staff. Haldeman was earnest, completely devoted to the Nixon cause, and impressed Magruder with his honesty, sharpness, and intelligence. But as they left the interview to take a golf cart tour of San Clemente, Haldeman suddenly became frantic. There were no carts available. He railed at those in charge of the carts, his manner insulting and harsh. He was almost hysterical. Magruder should have seen this incident as a sign that Haldeman wasn't who he seemed. He had control issues and a vicious streak. Charmed by the aura of power at San Clemente and eager for the job, Magruder chose to ignore this, much to his later regret. In everyday life, people can often do a good job of hiding their character flaws. However, under stress or crisis, these flaws can suddenly become very apparent. People under stress lose their normal self-control and reveal their insecurities about their reputation, their fear of failure, and their lack of inner resilience. On the other hand, some people can manage to maintain their composure even in stressful situations, rise to the occasion and demonstrate strength under pressure. There's no way to predict how someone will react until the heat is on, but you must pay close attention to such moments. Similarly, how people manage power and responsibility reveals a lot about their true nature. As Lincoln wisely said, if you want to test a man's character, give him power. On their way to gaining power, people often play the courtier, appearing deferential and following the party line. They do whatever it takes to reach the top. Once at the top, there are fewer restraints, and they may reveal something about themselves that you hadn't noticed before. Some people remain true to their values even after attaining a high position. They remain respectful and empathetic. However, many more people suddenly feel entitled to treat others differently now that they have the power. This is what happened to Lyndon Johnson once he achieved ultimate security in the Senate as Senate Majority Leader. Tired of years of playing the perfect courtier, he relished the power he had to upset or humiliate those who had crossed him in the past. He would deliberately avoid talking to certain senators, preferring to speak only to his assistant. He would also get up and leave the floor when a senator he disliked was giving an important speech, prompting other senators to follow him. If you look closely enough, there are always signs of these character traits in the past. Johnson had revealed such nasty signs early in his political career. However, more importantly, you need to pay attention to what people reveal once they are in power. Often, we assume that power has changed people, but in reality, it simply reveals more of who they are. People's choice of spouse or partner can also say a lot about them. Some individuals seek a partner they can dominate and control, perhaps someone younger, less intelligent, or less successful. Others choose a partner they can rescue from a difficult situation, playing the role of the savior. This is another form of power dynamics. People's choices in relationships and behavior often reflect their early childhood experiences and attachment styles. While some choices may seem surprising, they often stem from underlying logic. For instance, someone with a deep-seated fear of abandonment might choose someone who appears inferior in appearance or intelligence, knowing that this person will cling to them. Another aspect to consider is how people behave outside of work. In games or sports, they might reveal a competitive nature that they can control. They have a fear of being overtaken in any activity, even while driving. This need to be ahead and in the lead can be channeled functionally into their work, but it also reveals deep-seated insecurities when they lose in games. Their body language and attempts to circumvent or bend the rules can provide insight into their motivations. In general, people can be categorized as introverts or extroverts, and this trait plays a significant role in shaping their character. Extroverts are primarily driven by external factors. They are constantly concerned with what others think of them and tend to align their preferences with those of their social group. They are open to suggestions and new ideas, but only if they are popular or endorsed by someone they respect. Extroverts value external things, such as good clothes, delicious meals, and shared enjoyment with others. They seek out new and exciting sensations and are adept at following trends. They are not only comfortable in noisy and bustling environments but actively seek them out. Introverts, on the other hand, are more sensitive and easily drained by excessive outward activity. They prefer to conserve their energy and spend time alone or with a few close friends. Unlike extroverts, who are fascinated by facts and statistics for their own sake, introverts are interested in their own opinions and feelings. They enjoy theorizing and developing their own ideas. When they create something, they don't like to promote it. They find the effort unpleasant. Their work should speak for itself. Introverts also value privacy and have secrets. Their opinions are not influenced by external sources but by their own inner criteria, or at least they believe so. The larger the crowd, the more lost and lonely they feel. They may appear awkward, mistrustful, and uncomfortable with attention. Additionally, they tend to be more pessimistic and anxious than the average extrovert. Their boldness is expressed through their novel ideas and creativity. You may notice tendencies in both directions in individuals or yourself, but generally, people tend to lean towards one or the other. It's crucial to understand this distinction because introverts and extroverts don't naturally comprehend each other. To an extrovert, an introvert may seem dull, stubborn, or even antisocial. To an introvert, an extrovert may appear shallow, flighty, and overly concerned with what others think. Being one or the other is generally a genetic trait that can lead to vastly different perspectives on the same thing. Once you realize you're dealing with someone from the opposite personality type, it's essential to reassess their character and avoid imposing your own preferences on them. Furthermore, introverts and extroverts can often collaborate effectively, especially when individuals possess a combination of both qualities. Extroverts and introverts often don't get along, leading to frequent misunderstandings. However, it's important to remember that extroverts are more common than introverts in the world. When evaluating people's character, it's crucial to assess their relative strength. This strength originates deep within their core and can be influenced by various factors, including genetics, secure parenting, good mentors, and continuous improvement. Unlike outward displays of bluster or aggression, strong character manifests in overall resilience and adaptability. It's like a good piece of metal. It can give and bend but retains its shape and never breaks. The source of this strength lies in a feeling of personal security and self-worth. This enables individuals to accept criticism and learn from their experiences, preventing them from giving up easily. They are driven by a desire to improve and maintain rigor in their persistence. People of strong character are open to new ideas and approaches without compromising their core principles. In challenging situations, they maintain their composure and handle chaos and unpredictability without succumbing to anxiety. They keep their word, demonstrate patience, and can organize and complete tasks. Unlike individuals with weak character, people of strong character are not constantly insecure about their status. They can put their personal interests aside for the greater good, recognizing that what works best for the team ultimately benefits their own lives. On the other hand, people with weak character often start from the opposite position. They are easily overwhelmed by circumstances, making them unreliable and difficult to trust. They are evasive and avoid criticism, which makes it challenging to teach them. We continually encounter challenges in dealing with individuals who appear to listen attentively but revert to their preconceived notions. While we all possess a combination of strong and weak qualities, some individuals clearly lean towards one extreme or the other. It's advisable to seek out and associate with strong individuals while minimizing interactions with weak ones. This principle has guided Warren Buffett's investment decisions. He goes beyond financial figures to assess the CEOs he'll be dealing with, prioritizing resilience, dependability, and self-reliance. Imagine if we applied such measurements in hiring, partnering, and even choosing political leaders. In intimate relationships, other factors undoubtedly influence our choices, but strength of character should also be a significant consideration. This was a key factor in Franklin Roosevelt's decision to marry Eleanor Roosevelt. Despite his wealth and attractiveness, he could have chosen many other beautiful young women. However, he was drawn to Eleanor's openness to new experiences and her remarkable determination. He recognized the long-term value of her character surpassing all else. This choice proved to be wise and enduring. To assess strength or weakness, observe how individuals handle stressful situations and responsibilities. Analyze their patterns and accomplishments. You can also conduct tests to reveal their true nature. For instance, a well-timed joke at their expense can be revealing. Do they respond gracefully, not letting their insecurities cloud their judgment, or do their eyes flash resentment or even anger? To gauge their trustworthiness as a team player, share strategic information or a rumor with them. Observe how quickly they disseminate it to others. Are they quick to adopt one of your ideas and present it as their own? Criticize them directly. Do they take this feedback to heart, demonstrating a willingness to learn and improve? Or do they dismiss it without any effort, show overt signs of resentment? Give them an open-ended assignment with less direction than usual and observe how they organize their thoughts in time. Challenge them with a challenging assignment or an innovative approach to a task and see how they respond, manage their anxiety, and handle pressure. Remember, a weak character can negate all the other potential positive qualities a person may possess. For instance, individuals with high intelligence but weak character may generate good ideas and perform well, but they may crumble under pressure, be resistant to criticism, prioritize their own agenda, or exhibit arrogance and annoying qualities that cause others to quit, negatively impacting the overall environment. There are hidden costs associated with working with or hiring such individuals. On the other hand, someone less charming and intelligent but with strong character will prove more reliable and productive in the long run. Individuals of genuine strength are rare, and if you encounter one, you should respond as if you had discovered a treasure. Toxic types. While each person's character is as unique as a fingerprint, throughout history, certain types have consistently recurred and can be particularly challenging to deal with. Unlike the more obviously evil or manipulative characters that are easily identifiable, these types are more deceptive. They often present their weaknesses as positive qualities, luring you in with their appearance. However, it is only over time that you realize the toxic nature beneath their facade, often when it is too late. Your best defense is to be informed about these types, recognize the signs early on, and avoid getting involved or disengaging from them as quickly as possible. The hyper-perfectionist. You may be drawn to their circle by their exceptional work ethic and dedication to producing the best possible results. They often put in longer hours than even the lowest-ranking employees. While they may not resort to yelling at those below them, their intense focus and drive can be overwhelming. Not doing the job right, but that's because they want to maintain the highest standards, which should be a positive thing. However, if you're unfortunate enough to work with or for such individuals, you will gradually uncover the truth. They can delegate tasks. They have to oversee everything. It's less about high standards and dedication to the group than about power and control. Such people often have dependency issues stemming from their family background, similar to Howard Hughes. Any feeling that they might have to rely on someone for something reopens old wounds and anxieties. They can't trust anyone. Once their back is turned, they imagine everyone's lacking off. Their compulsive need to micromanage leads to resentment and secret resistance, which is precisely what they fear the most. You'll notice that the group they lead is poorly organized because everything must flow through them. This results in chaos and political infighting as courtiers struggle to gain favor with the king, who controls everything. Hyper-perfectionists often have health problems because they work themselves to the bone. They like to blame others for everything that goes wrong. No one is working hard enough. They have patterns of initial success followed by burnout and spectacular failures. It's best to recognize this type before getting entangled with them on any level. They can't be satisfied with anything you do and will slowly consume you with their anxieties, abuse, and desire to control. The relentless rebel. At first glance, such people can seem quite captivating. They despise authority and adore the underdog. Most of us secretly harbor an attraction to such an attitude. It appeals to the adolescent within us, the desire to defy our teachers. They don't recognize rules or precedents. Following conventions is for the weak and conformist. These types often have a biting sense of humor, which they might turn on you, but that's part of their charm. Authenticity, their need to belittle everyone, or so you perceive. However, if you happen to associate with this type more closely, you will discover that it's an uncontrollable compulsion to feel superior, not a higher moral quality. In their childhood, a parent or father figure likely disappointed them, leading to mistrust and hatred of those in power. Consequently, they can't accept criticism from others because it reeks of authority. They can't be told what to do. Everything must be on their terms. If you cross them, you will be labeled as the oppressor and subject to their vicious humor. They gain attention through their rebellious stance and soon become addicted to it. Ultimately, it's all about power. No one is above them, and anyone who dares will pay the price. Examine their past history. They tend to split with people on extremely bad terms, exacerbated by their insults. Don't be deceived by their hipster persona. These individuals are perpetually stuck in adolescence, and attempting to work with them is as futile as trying to engage in a conflict with a sulky teenager. The personalizer. These people appear so sensitive and thoughtful, a rare and admirable quality. They might seem a bit melancholic, but sensitive individuals often face challenges in life. You are often drawn to their aura and want to help. Additionally, they can seem intelligent, considerate, and pleasant to work with. However, you will later realize that their sensitivity is limited to the inward direction. They tend to interpret everything people say or do as personal. They dwell on things for days, long after you've forgotten some harmless comment they've taken to heart. As children, they had an gnawing feeling that they never received enough from their parents: love, attention, material possessions. As they grow older, everything reminds them of what they didn't get. They live with resentment and expect others to give them things without having to earn them. Ask them. They are perpetually on guard. Are you paying attention to them? Do you respect them? Are you giving them what they paid for? Being somewhat irritable and touchy, they inevitably push people away, which makes them even more sensitive. At some point, they start to have a perpetual look of disappointment. You will notice a pattern of many falling outs with people in their life, but they will always see themselves as the wrong party. Never, ever inadvertently insult such a type. They have an incredibly long memory and can spend years getting back at you. If you can recognize this type early enough, it's better to avoid them, as they will inevitably make you feel guilty for something. The drama magnet. They will draw you in with their exciting presence. They have unusual energy and captivating stories to tell. Their animated features and witty banter make them enjoyable to be around until the drama turns ugly. As children, they learned that the only way to get lasting love and attention was to entangle their parents in their troubles and problems, which had to be significant enough to emotionally engage the parents over time. This became a habit, their way of feeling alive and desired. Most people shy away from confrontation, but they seem to relish it. As you get to know them better, you will hear more tales of bickering and battles in their life, but they manage to always position themselves as the victim. You must realize that their greatest need is to ensnare you in their drama at all costs. They will embroil you in their conflicts to the point where you feel guilty for disengaging. It's best to recognize them as early as possible before you become entangled and dragged down. Examine their past for evidence of this pattern and run for the hills if you suspect you're dealing with such a type. The big talker. You're impressed by their ideas and the projects they're contemplating. They need help and backers, and you're sympathetic, but take a moment to review their record. For signs of past achievements or anything tangible, You might be dealing with a type that is not overtly dangerous but could be maddening and waste your valuable time. In essence, these people are ambivalent. On the one hand, they are secretly afraid of the effort and responsibility that come with translating their ideas into action. On the other hand, they crave attention and power. The two sides within them clash, but the anxious side inevitably prevails, and they slip away at the last moment. They fabricate reasons for leaving after you have committed to them. They themselves never finish anything. In the end, they tend to blame others for not realizing their visions, society, nebulous antagonistic forces, or bad luck, or they try to find a sucker who will do all the hard work in bringing their vague ideas to life but will take the blame if it all goes wrong. Often, such people had inconsistent parents who would suddenly turn on them for the slightest misdeed. Consequently, their goal in life is to avoid situations that might expose them to criticism and judgment. They handle this by learning to talk well and impress people with stories but running away when called to account, always with an excuse. Carefully examine their past for signs of this behavior. If they seem like this type, be amused by their stories but don't take them any further. The sexualizer. They appear to be brimming with sexual energy, in a refreshing way that seems unrepressed. They tend to mix work with pleasure, blurring the usual boundaries for when it's appropriate to use this energy. You might think this is healthy and natural, but in reality, it's compulsive and stems from a dark place. In their earliest years, such people likely suffered some form of sexual abuse, whether it was physical or more psychological, expressed through subtle but inappropriate looks and touches by their parents. A pattern is deeply ingrained within them and cannot be controlled. Relationships with these individuals tend to be perceived as potentially sexual. Sex becomes a means of self-validation, and young people of this type can lead exciting and promiscuous lives because they can easily charm others. However, as they age, prolonged periods without this validation can lead to depression and suicide, causing them to become increasingly desperate. If they hold positions of leadership, they use their power to get what they want, pretending to be natural and uninhibited. As they grow older, this behavior becomes increasingly pathetic and frightening. It's impossible to help or save them from their compulsion. The best course of action is to protect yourself from getting entangled with them in any way. The pampered prince/princess. These individuals captivate you with their regal air and exude a subtle sense of superiority. It's pleasant to meet confident and destined to be crowned people. Slowly, you might find yourself doing favors for them, working extra hard without pay, and not fully understanding the reasons behind it. Somehow, they express a need to be taken care of, and they are masters at manipulating others into pampering them. In childhood, their parents indulged their every whim and shielded them from any harsh external influences. Some children even exploit this behavior in their parents by acting especially helpless. Regardless of the cause, as adults, their greatest desire is to replicate this early pampering, which remains their lost paradise. You will often notice that when they don't get what they want, they display baby-like behavior, pouting, or even tantrums. This pattern repeats itself in all their intimate relationships. Unless you have a strong desire to pamper others, these relationships can be frustrating and always on their terms. They lack the ability to handle the harsh realities of adult life and either manipulate someone into the pampering role or resort to drinking and drugs to numb their pain. The pleaser. You've never met anyone so incredibly nice and considerate. You almost can't believe how accommodating and charming they are. But gradually, you start to have some doubts. Perhaps they don't show up as promised or don't do a good job. It's subtle, But the longer this goes on, the more it seems like they're sabotaging you or talking behind your back. These types are consummate courtiers. They've developed their niceness not out of genuine affection for others, but as a defense mechanism. Maybe they had harsh and punishing parents who scrutinized their every move. Smiling and being deferential was their way of deflecting any hostility, and it's become their lifelong pattern. They probably also resorted to lying to their parents, and they're generally skilled and experienced liars, just as when they were children. Behind the smiles and flattery lies a lot of resentment at the role they're expected to play. They secretly yearn to harm or steal from the person they serve or defer to. So, be on your guard with people who actively exert so much charm and politeness, past the point of what's natural. They can turn out to be quite passive-aggressive, especially when you're not looking. The savior, you can't believe your luck. You've met someone who will save you from your troubles and difficulties. They somehow recognized your need for help, and here they are with books, strategies, and the right foods to eat. At first, it's all quite seductive, but your doubts start the moment you want to assert your independence and do things on your own. In childhood, these types often had to become the caregivers of their own parents, siblings, or even themselves. For instance, the mother might make their own needs the primary concern of the family. Such children often develop a strong sense of responsibility and a desire to help others, compensate for the lack of care they receive by feeling powerful in the inverted relationship. This sets a pattern. They gain their greatest satisfaction from rescuing people, being the caregiver and savior. They have a knack for identifying those in need of salvation. However, you can detect the compulsive nature of this behavior by their need to control you. If they are willing to let you stand on your own 2 feet after some initial assistance, then they are truly noble. If not, it's really about the power they can exert. Regardless, it's always best to cultivate self-reliance and tell saviors to save themselves. The easy moralizer. They express outrage at perceived injustices or other wrongs with eloquence, attracting followers, including you. However, sometimes you notice cracks in their righteous facade. They may not treat their employees well, be condescending to their spouses, or have a secret life or vice you catch glimpses of. As children, they were often made to feel guilty for their own strong impulses and desires for pleasure. They were punished and tried to suppress these impulses, leading to self-loathing and a tendency to project negative qualities onto others or envy those who are not so repressed. They dislike others enjoying themselves. Instead of expressing their envy, they choose to judge and condemn. In adulthood, this lack of nuance manifests as a complete dichotomy between good and evil, with no middle ground. They are at war with human nature, unable to accept our less than perfect traits. Their morality is as easy and compulsive as drinking or gambling, requiring no sacrifices from them, just a lot of noble words. They thrive in a culture of political correctness. In reality, they are secretly drawn to what they condemn, which is why they will inevitably have a secret side. You will certainly be the one to uncover it. Targeted by their inquisition if you get too close, notice their lack of empathy early on and maintain your distance. For more toxic types, refer to chapters on envy, 10, grandiosity, 11, and aggression, 16. The superior character. This law is simple and unwavering. You have an innate character formed from elements predating your conscious awareness deep within you. This character compels you to repeat certain actions, strategies, and decisions. The brain structures itself to facilitate this. Once you think and take an action, a neural pathway is established, leading you to repeat it repeatedly. In relation to this law, you can choose one of two paths. each determining the course of your life. The first path is ignorance and denial. You fail to recognize the patterns in your life and refuse to accept the idea that your early years left a profound and enduring impact on your behavior. You believe your character is entirely malleable and that you can reshape yourself at will. You can follow the same path to power and fame as someone else, even though they come from vastly different circumstances. The concept of a set character may seem like a prison, and many people secretly yearn to transcend themselves through drugs, alcohol, or video games. However, the consequences of denial are simple. The compulsive behaviors and patterns become even more entrenched. You cannot deviate from the path of your character or wish it away. It is too powerful. This was precisely the predicament faced by Howard Hughes. He envisioned himself as a great businessman, establishing an empire that would surpass his father's. However, by nature, he lacked the ability to manage people effectively. His true strength lay in his technical expertise. He possessed a remarkable understanding of the design and engineering aspects of airplane production. If he had acknowledged and accepted this, he could have carved out a brilliant career as the visionary behind his own aircraft company, leaving the day-to-day operations to others. Operations to someone truly capable are possible, but he lived with an image of himself that didn't align with his true character. This led to a pattern of failures and a miserable life. The other path is more challenging, but the only one that leads to true power and the development of a superior character. It involves a thorough self-examination. You assess your deepest character traits, determining whether you're an introvert or extrovert, whether you're prone to high levels of anxiety and sensitivity, hostility and anger, or a profound need to connect with people. You identify your primal inclinations, the subjects and activities you naturally gravitate towards. You examine the quality of your attachments with your parents, viewing your current relationships as a reflection of this. You scrutinize your own mistakes and the recurring patterns that hinder your progress. You acknowledge your limitations, the situations where you don't perform at your best. You also recognize the natural strengths in your character that have endured beyond adolescence. With this newfound awareness, you break free from the shackles of your character, no longer compelled to endlessly repeat the same strategies and mistakes. As you recognize yourself falling into one of your usual patterns, you can catch yourself in time and step back. While complete elimination of such patterns may be challenging, with practice, you can minimize their impact. Knowing your limitations, you avoid attempting tasks beyond your capacity or inclination. Instead, you choose career paths that align with your character and complement your strengths. In general, you embrace and accept your character, not seeking to become someone else but to fully realize your true potential. You view your character as the clay you will work with, gradually transforming your weaknesses into strengths. You don't flee from your flaws but rather recognize them as a genuine source of power. Joan Crawford, 1908-1977, whose career spanned several decades, faced numerous challenges during her early years. Abandoned by her father shortly after her birth, she grew up in poverty, with her mother harboring deep resentment and constantly beating her. As a child, she discovered that her stepfather, whom she adored, was not her biological father, and he too abandoned the family. This tumultuous childhood marked by punishments, betrayals, and abandonments left profound scars on her psyche. Despite these insecurities, Crawford approached her acting career with unwavering self-reflection and objectivity. She recognized her hypersensitivity, fragility, and the lingering pain and sadness that permeated her. Driven by a yearning for love and a constant need for a father figure, she channeled these vulnerabilities into her performances. Crawford made a conscious decision to infuse her roles with her own emotions of sadness and betrayal, resonating with women worldwide. Unlike many other actresses who portrayed false cheerfulness and superficiality, Crawford's authenticity drew audiences in. She directed her desperate need for love toward the camera, allowing audiences to sense her vulnerability. In the film industry, Crawford found a father figure in the directors she worked with. She treated them with utmost respect and developed an acute sense of their preferences and dislikes. Without even looking at them or listening to their words, she could sense their displeasure with her acting and swiftly incorporate their criticisms into her performances. This remarkable ability made her a dream come true for directors. Crawford's success was further propelled by her unique combination of self-awareness, vulnerability, and exceptional talent. She turned her hypersensitivity outward, becoming an attentive listener and adept at understanding the needs of her collaborators. This combination of self-reflection, authenticity, and exceptional skills made her a formidable force in the film industry, leaving an indelible mark on the world of cinema. Fierce willpower, spanning over 4 decades, is an unheard of feat for an actress in Hollywood. This is the alchemy you must harness within yourself. If you're a hyper-perfectionist who craves control, redirect this energy into productive work instead of using it on others. Your attention to detail and high standards are positive when channeled correctly. If you're a pleaser, you've developed courtier skills and genuine charm. If you can identify the source of this trait, you can control its compulsive and defensive aspects and transform it into a powerful social skill. If you're highly sensitive and prone to taking things personally, work to redirect this into active empathy. See Chapter 2 and turn this flaw into an asset for positive social purposes. If you have a rebellious streak, you naturally dislike conventions and conventional ways of doing things. Channel this into innovative work instead of compulsively insulting and alienating people. For every weakness, there's a corresponding strength. Finally, you need to refine or cultivate those traits that define a strong character: resilience under pressure, attention to detail, the ability to complete tasks, teamwork, and tolerance of people's differences. The only way to achieve this is by working on your habits, which shape your character over time. For instance, train yourself not to react impulsively by repeatedly exposing yourself to stressful or adverse situations to desensitize yourself. In mundane everyday tasks, cultivate patience and attention to detail. Deliberately take on tasks slightly beyond your capabilities. Completing them requires harder work, helping you establish discipline and better work habits. Train yourself to constantly think about your actions and decisions. It's best for the team. You also seek out others who exhibit strong character and associate with them as much as possible. By doing so, you can absorb their energy and habits. To develop some flexibility in your character, which is a sign of strength, you occasionally shake yourself up by trying out new strategies or ways of thinking, doing the opposite of what you normally do. Through this work, you will break free from the character you created in your early years and the compulsive behaviors it leads to. You will now have the power to actively shape your character and the fate that comes with it. It's a mistake to believe that you can perform an action or behave in a certain way once and never again. The mistake of those who say, "Let us work hard and save every penny until we are 30, then we will finally enjoy ourselves." At 30, they'll have developed a strong work ethic and an avaricious streak, and they'll never truly enjoy themselves again. What you do, you will likely do again. Indeed, you've probably already done it in the distant past. The most painful aspect of life is that it's our own decisions that trap us in this rut, under the crushing wheels of our own choices. The truth is that even before making those decisions, we were already headed in that direction. A decision or action is an infallible sign of what we'll do again, not because of any vague, mystical, or astrological reason, but because they result from an automatic reaction that will repeat itself. Cesare Pavez.